resembles what? A plan, didn't it? We're going to go after mortgage companies. We're going to hold them accountable. We're going to tear down houses. We're going to take vacant lots and we're going to put them into the hands of the adjacent property owners, which is going to do what? It's going to increase property values, which is going to increase revenue, because if you have more, you're going to pay more. Of course, if I have more, I'm willing to pay more, which is going to increase your property tax, which is going to make your schools better, which is going to make the kids more likely to succeed. It sounds so win-win, but it is a plan. It is something that the city has lacked for years, a vision, a plan. Everybody says, and I've heard council members say this, I'm the only guy up here without an agenda. I have an agenda. Let's make the city a little bit better. So now, we're going to open up the floor to you. All right? If you would like to direct your question at a particular council member, feel free. Okay? Just promise me you won't say anything bad about my mother and we'll all get along fine. So, any questions or comments?
I would like to make the comment that I think so many people in this city feel that they're living in a place that's worse than. And we all have basically the same problems in our neighborhoods. And I think that being able to share that with people and how we've reacted to it, because we absolutely refuse to have a boarded up house in our neighborhoods. We'll watch it, we'll take care of it, we'll mow the yards, but do not board that up, because that's like a signal that, here's this house that you can break into, take the pipes, and this is happening all over the city. And that's the crime that you were talking about, that these nuisance homes are creating. So, we need to be more understanding of all the different wards, because it's not just any one particular ward. And I'm sure there are areas that are suffering more than others, but it has to be a proactive rather than a reactive.
And I couldn't agree with you more, because at my last board meeting, I did tell my constituents that I do feel as if I was failing at this job, because I always felt as if everything I was doing was reactive. You called, you had a complaint, I addressed your concern. That's reactive. I didn't feel like I was earning my money. So you're right, change comes through getting involved. And until neighborhoods get involved, and no offense to these gentlemen, because I love them all, I have the best neighborhood associations in the city.
Do you envision any discussion with housing developers to develop new market rate, I think that's what you call it, housing in the city in the future when the economy improves, when new construction comes back? Because every time we talk about jobs coming to the city or coming to the area, those folks aren't going to buy in the city if there isn't an array of market rate housing available. So is there any plan for working with housing developers?
Let me, again, squeaky's back on the microphone, sorry. There has been some, a few years back, actually back when I started coming down to council meetings back in, I don't know, it was 2003, 2004, when I was just sitting over bugging Casser in the front row. There have been some areas where they had taken and wiped out entire blocks and started rebuilding. Now there is also a problem that does pose in some neighborhoods, particularly over where I'm at, and also Frank, maybe a little more than these two gentlemen, which is our neighborhoods are on older lots. And under the zoning laws of the city now, a lot has to be at least 60 foot wide to build on, I believe is the number. Mary, is that right? About 60 foot wide. So if you tear down a house that is on a 45 foot wide lot, you can't build. Now the importance of that is coming when we're tearing these things down. We can't just go haphazardly picking one here, one there, one there. And to a certain extent, you have to do that. If there's one bad house in an area, that's fine. But it's also important to bundle those together. Because the important part of that is, if I wipe out, a good example, on Stark Avenue Southwest, I try to go through my ward about once a month and look at houses that are moving beyond just being vacant to being dilapidated, or need boarded up if it needs board up. You don't like that, but sometimes you have to. Or if it needs to be, or if obviously someone's been breaking into it, whatever the case may be. Well, over the course of the last couple of years, Stark Avenue Southwest has had several fires. We've had, in that area, we've had a lot of arson over there, and there's has added to the problem. So we've got in that area, in a matter of just 2, 3, 4 houses in a row that need to get knocked down. Areas like that, whether it's in my ward, whether it's in Frank's ward, whether it's in anybody's ward, those are, to me, one of the big targets. You can knock out 3 houses in a row, 4 houses in a row. We can then actually develop those and put housing that somebody might actually want to buy. I know it's a novel idea, but a house that somebody might actually want to live in, when you can start to build a house that maybe isn't 150 years old, where you can build a house that's got all the new amenities, or is, not going to require $40,000 worth of repairs just to make it livable. So it's an excellent question, and yes, it's critical, I think, that we try to just be smart about this stuff. That when you're tearing these things down, if you have a place where you can wipe out several in a row and turn that over and build new, it's beautiful. By the way, I'm sure everybody in the room is a nerd like me, right? We've all read the housing and urban development codes on how we're supposed to do these things. I know I can't put mine down. So, yes, reads better than Stephen King. When you tear a house down, we're supposed to replace it. That's actually what we're supposed to do when we use federal funds to tear down houses. We tear one down, we replace it. Does anybody think we're doing that right now? No. We got to be smarter. It's not enough. You hear this argument all the time, big government, small government. I don't give a damn either way. It's smart government or dumb government. Okay? You got to be smart, you got to be efficient. We don't have limitless resources. But that's not always a bad thing. You know what I told Ed from the repositories over there, when I sat in the endorsement meeting years ago, back when I first ran and I lost, I said there is good news about being broke. There's actually an upside. It makes you focus your priorities. When you got tons of money falling out of your pockets, you can throw a little here, a little there, do whatever you want. When you're broke, you actually have to focus what really matters to you. Crime matters. Nuisance property matters. Getting eyesores gone, new housing up to bring people in, that matters. So with the limited resources we have, we've got to be smart about it. And we've got to have a plan on how we're going to do that. We need a comprehensive plan citywide, but especially on housing. And that's something that I know I've said, others have said, but saying it's one thing, we got to do it. Just stop talking, especially me, I'm squeaky. Stop talking and do it. That's what matters. I don't know if anybody else wants to address that.
You got a question here?
I have a comment / suggestion. I live at a nuisance property in Ward 9, and kind of being like an inside and seeing everything. What seems to be the problem, especially with the crime, is boredom. A lot of people don't have jobs in those areas, and I think that the jobs fairs that we have in the city are geared more toward professional college educated level people. When the people who are living at these properties, they need a place to start. And if we could get some kind of job fair in place where we could put flyers up at all those properties and all those neighborhoods and have little solutions there. And some of the places here in the city that are higher than maybe aren't on that professional college educated level that might have some correlation and some decrease in the crime.
I know Frank is chomping at the bit to talk to you, but I do want to say, because what you're talking about is important, and there's, the economy is a big issue, obviously. It's nationwide and statewide, everything, but there are things we can do here. So can I brag for a second about something that I'm particularly proud of that we've done as a group? Because it goes along those lines, and I do hate bragging, not really.
No, not really.
But
Not about this.
I'm gonna, my fake modesty aside, we're gonna have an abatement, another, a development project coming downstairs here. It's either this week or next week. This is going to be another one that's going to be built in the Mills Industrial Park, which is down in my ward. And we see these types of things come all the time. What's been interesting is the last three of them. There's not been any mention in the paper about it. You don't see it on the internet anywhere, but this is going to be the third one in a row because of the work that we as a group, I think in particular, have forced the hand on and saying, don't bring us any kind of tax breaks for a company to build in the city unless they require local construction on every last brick that goes in, everything that gets done. The last two that we did, we've got it. And by the way, not just from small companies. The first one that came down that way was from General Electric, who's adding an energy a building down in Ward 5. Everyone said, well, you can't tell GE who they got to hire. And they'll leave.
Yes,
they'll
we
go
did.
to Alliance. They'll go to Timbuktu. I don't know. They'll go somewhere. So now don't bring it downstairs. If you're not going to hire our construction workers and our contractors, you're not going to use our people whose money is paying for that, then don't bring it here. And so we went back and said, hey, council wants you to promise in writing to hire local construction workers. You know what they said? Yeah, no problem. We're good with that. All you had to do was ask, and they did it. So another one, we just passed another one Monday night, local construction required on it. And we're going to have another one coming down, local construction required. I know that's not the whole answer to it, but these are also jobs that you don't necessarily need a doctorate to do. So I do think that is one little aspect in our corner of the earth that we can affect. So, and I am proud of that. I know Frank really wants to answer your question.
No, actually, Kevin pretty much covered it. But when it does come to job creation in the city of Canton, we're not doing a very good job of it. And the administration is working hard. Council members are on the phone talking to people, trying to bring people in here. But it's like having a 1972 Ford Pinto that has rust all over it, okay? It doesn't run half the time. And you're going to go out and spend $10,000 on spinning rims for it? I don't think so. And until we clean up the crime issues and the neighborhood problems and start fixing up our house, per se, okay, we currently have like a wall that has holes in it. And we're not even patching the drywall. We're just throwing paint over it. Nobody is going to want to invest in a community that isn't shining. It all starts in our neighborhoods. And I know that's not the answer you want to hear. You want to hear that people are working hard to bring jobs. And there are people within the administration working hard to bring these jobs. But we have to make Canton something that, a community where companies want to invest in us. They bring their executives in, they look, they say, I could live here. I could live there. I would like to live in Market Heights. I want to live in Ridgewood. I want to live in the Southwest End. I want to live in these areas. If they feel comfortable with us, they'll bring jobs.
Frank, I just want to make one other point there.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to kind of talk to your point directly, Stephanie, as to why what Kevin was saying is relevant about the local trades. Our local plumbers union needs guys. They're hiring right now. It's a great job. If you know of anyone, a young woman or a young man who's looking for good employment, keep that in mind. Our iron workers who did a lot of the work here in City Hall, playing in some of the I-beams, they're hiring. If you know anyone, put them in that direction. And these are jobs to where they pay for your apprentice school, get you all the way through that, get you set up to where you can be a journeyman, and have a great wage and reasonable hours. So the things that Kevin is saying, it's not just abstract, like this sounds fantastic. It has a real practical effect, and it's happening now. So if you know anyone that is in a situation like Stephanie described, keep those things in mind and get them to fill out that job application.
Big Bad Brett.
Is there any way, you talked about the houses can't be built on a lot smaller than 60 feet, that if you're tearing a house down, that it could be grandfathered, that a house could be put on that lot because you're removing an old one? I mean, isn't there a way to get an exception to that rule?
You can always apply for zoning variance.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie, that is a tough sell. It really is. Now, the grandfather was houses that were there were grandfathered in. Mine, by the way. The great thing about my lot is I can mow it in about 4 seconds. I'm the guy with the electric mower. It doesn't matter because the battery will last plenty long to mow that stamp-sized yard. But they don't let you build on that. And you can always ask the zoning department to make an exception on something. The question is, of course,
there should be something.
Do you get it?
Yeah, I'm thinking there should be something written saying that if this person is going to take over this lot that's had the house removed, that something with the same size or smaller could be put back on that lot.
I kind of look at that a little bit differently, see, because I think if we tear it down and the two people adjacent split that property, then we decrease the housing stock, the number of houses in the city, which is going to drive up our property value. We have housing for, 120,000 people with a population of 70. One of our investors in the area, Mike Rucavina, told me point blank that he is renting to people now who he would not have considered 5 years ago because he has to get these properties filled. And if he doesn't get the property filled, he's going to get vandalized, ripped off. So I think that if we were going to come up with a master plan for the city, we want to increase lot sizes, reduce the number of houses in the city, create home ownership programs. Not only will our investors make more money, but the property owner's value will go up, and it's kind of win-win. To push for legislation to be able to build a house back on a 48-foot lot, I would rather leave that dog sleeping.
And the other problem would be, and just from complaints that I get, shared driveways are a nightmare in the city. So the last thing that we want to do is, if we have an opportunity to widen lots, we really want to look towards that. And these small lots with shared driveways with street parking, if we're going to invest in new homes, they need to be the style that people want, where you have the driveway with the garage attached to the house. And not only that, but it really cuts down on complaints and issues. I can't tell you how many people, I've actually had people move because the person they're sharing a driveway with has been an absolute nightmare. And so I don't know if the smaller lots are the ideal setup, but if we can get two small lots together and we can build a new house on those two lots, that could be a real asset.
Ms. Zuwacki.
In the event that
Marty, she had her hand
Sorry.
up first. You're going to sleep on the couch, brother. You don't cut your wife off now.
if you thought about the idea of instead of redeveloping, okay, I shudder every time I hear something where they're going to build a bunch of new houses. Not because I don't want new houses, but because we have excess real estate, okay? How about if we actually do this with some logic, where we would have someone come in and assess the neighborhood, you know, look at what really does need to be demolished or whatever, and do like a drawing of what it could look like, okay? Instead of the idea of wiping out a bunch of houses and then building a bunch more that we really don't need.
Actually, that's already taking place in some areas. Member West has an area down on, if I'm not mistaken, Sandal, where they came in and they did an entire neighborhood. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we have an area,
The Summit neighborhood also.
Summit, well, compliments of Canton City Schools, that didn't go too well, but,
You're right. I think
Right.
the key is there are times and places where you want to rebuild. Now, I'll tell you, going and doing an audit, our CBO, our Chief Building Official, along with some of our staff, have been going through the city block by block, making updates to those lists over the last, I think it's been a month to 6 weeks. I have 2 small kids, so I like to get them out of the house. So one of the things that we'll do is, me and the kids will go get on their bikes and just go through the neighborhood, and I walk through and try to keep that inventory going. I've got, on my laptop, every house that's on the demo list, or I'm trying to get onto the demo list right there. So a lot of that is just, we need to be smarter about how we do it.
I do think we need to be, I don't think we're in the position right now to be thinking of rebuilding. We have to go through, I know this sounds bad, we have to go through a demolition time where we're getting this stock of vacant homes that are bringing down property values off the books. And then once we do that, then we can think of building. But the one worry is if we do some demos and some building, we never really put our whole effort behind one cause, and everything is done halfway. And we need to go through a period to where we get the majority, if not every, house that needs to come down, and then get into the rebuilding process.
That's why I said,
Yes.
I don't even want to think
Absolutely.
about rebuilding. I want to think about trying what we have, making the best decisions. All right, and like you're saying, then make the neighborhood a more beautiful place to live.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm not sure which one. Go ahead, sir.
I live in Ward 9 in the Vassar Park Neighborhood Association, and my perception would be in our neighborhood, crime has gone up tenfold in probably 2 or 3 years. It's been a dramatic increase. For years we've lived there. I thought nothing of going out for a walk at midnight if my legs were aching or my wife and I would walk. I don't let her go out of the house after dark now unless I'm there specifically at the door watching when she comes home. So that's a concern. One of the from just common sense appearance, there's a large apartment complex spitting distance from my house that seems to be a center of illegal drug activity. I don't have hard facts or evidence. If I do, we'd all be in court right now. I'm just saying, as a common sense person, saying it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out what that little rendezvous with those 2 cars are doing. Now, I know we have laws already on the books, federal, state, and local, against drug dealing. I know the police force is not up to full strength that we'd like to see, but is there something city government can do to start to pressure the owner of a large rental complex of who are you renting to? A police officer told me that in that building there's folks there on assisted, they get government assistance on the rent, yet there's the money to put in surveillance cameras around their apartment and in the hallway of the public space so they can see when law enforcement is in the building. So what can there be done to at least start to exert some pressure? We came home the other day, my wife called and said, you better come home, there's 6 police cars in front of our house. I got home and there's 12 officers walking through the street with semi-automatic rifles. While on one hand that makes me feel very safe to say, nobody's going to touch me today, but you get a little worried about stray bullets and bulletproof vests, and they were after, and found out from them that there had been a shooting 2 days before that I didn't know about at the same apartment complex. So anyway, that's my question. Are there things city government can do to say, you clean something up here or else the city can do this, this, and this, and this?
Okay, well, this is where the real Frank gets to come out, because this is Frank gets to come out and the politicians check at the door. Okay, a building you're making reference to, I would like to bring everybody up to speed on that, but I cannot, but I would be more than glad to talk to you and your wife after the meeting privately in regards to what's going on. But here's where the problem lies. We're running a thing called intelligence-driven policing. Okay? So, what you have to do is you have to pick up the phone and you have to call it in.
We've got your email.
Right, so now what we do is we call this complaint in. And we got this guy sitting here at a desk and he's taking all this data, right? And he's going to go through all this data and he's going to hand this data off to the safety director and he's going to say, this is where the crime is. No, all you got to do is stick your head out my damn window and I'll tell you where the crime is. I don't need the guy sitting at the computer. I need the gang task force back. I need guys like Ken Ippolito and his clowns in Ridgewood Castle running through the goddamn board is what I need. That's what I need.
Come on, get
But
fired up.
Yeah,
Fire up. Come on.
But until we get rid of this intelligence-led policing, which I might add, under this safety director, the crime in the city of Canton has increased by 16%.
Hell yeah.
Now, you show me where you fail at your job 16% of the time and you still have a job, that baffles me. So you're right. What can government do? I'm leaning on economic and community development to spend what they call their sacred community block grant dollars on police. We're the only municipality that gets these funds that doesn't use it towards the police department. $650,000 in Northeast programs. I say, what are these programs? Well, Councilman Morris, it's whatever you want. I want $250,000 for police. Well, we can do that. Oh, no, we're going to do it. I want that money for police because, well, community block grant dollars are for safety, to protect your neighborhoods. My dogs are afraid to go outside after dark. I mean, up in your neighborhood, sir, no disrespect, the guy just got shot in the arm. In my neighborhood, there was a homicide in front of a 5-year-old little girl. So, are we putting pressure on the administration? Are we putting pressure on the police department? I've got that chief of police on speed dial. I'm on him daily. Am I trying to deal with Mr. Ippolito? I've cussed this man out. I've gotten a fence put up.
Is that the gentleman that owns the complex?
Yes.
Yeah, I got a fence put
He
up.
owns it in our neighborhood.
We've had talks with the law department to have the property declared a nuisance. If I have the property declared a nuisance, there's going to be a lot of people on that property that have to move.
Good. And there's some
Yes, sir.
There are, by no means do I mean to say that everybody there's a criminal. I do not. Some of those folks are friends of mine, and they say, we park in front of your house because we're afraid to park in this parking lot. One guy, I don't know if it's true or not, he said, they're back there selling drugs off the hood of their car like it's a flea market. I don't know. I don't go in that lot.
See, and I feel you on this. I know the concerns on safety. I had a constituent tell me, I'm going to sell this house and I'm getting out of this neighborhood. And I told her, honey, just go to sleep. I mean, my own wife is telling me, we got to get out of here. So when I sit up here on Monday nights and I hear, we're doing a great job and we're taking a proactive approach at this, I'm not seeing it in my neighborhood because I'm still hearing gunshots. So I will bring you up to speed after the meeting on where we're at with that because I don't want to do anything.
I haven't heard yet addressed this evening. A lot of good things were said. I particularly want to...
Who are you, sir?
Dan Quinlan. I live at 17th and Fraser. I'm a real estate broker. I'm a lease agent and a property manager. So I have a lot of experience in this whole area that we're talking about tonight. I want to make a comment that what I heard about Plan B or the other plans while we're working on demo and other immediate issues. The issues to keep and to get and to attract younger people and homeowners, people that are invested in the property, and current owners that have an easier way to get funds for remodeling the primary focus. If you don't focus in those areas to keep people and to get people, you're going to be spending a lot of time demolishing homes. And it's going to be that way in 2013, it's going to be that way in 2020. If you start now with ways to keep people and to attract people to live in the city again, young couples and folks that are interested in taking care of a house, you'll get the employers back and you'll keep the houses from getting boarded up. That's primary. You can't do anything in the meantime other than focus on those issues, take care of the nuisance properties the best you can with police action and other things. Yes, the stories are all true. There are a lot of good landlords in the city of Canton. Many, many good landlords. There are a few bad apples. We haven't heard anything tonight about the language that was proposed for increasing the fees to landlords, and I wanted to tie that in to make sure I give you my comments that I don't believe that taxing, which is what that is, the landlords for rental properties, is getting what you want. You'll feel better maybe. You're angry. Maybe you feel that that can punish landlords in general to get back at the person that put 2x4s of plywood over the windows of your house next door. But that's not going to solve the problem. You actually want to find a way to work with landlords, the good ones, weed and feed them. Harass the ones that aren't good and reward the ones that are. But do not tax all of them in a fell swoop, because you'll chase off the good ones. The Canapalitos never leave.
I'll answer your question on that. In no way was the landlord registration fee meant to be at all viewed as a punishment. Exactly what you said with the down payment assistance and with the money for renovating the foreclosed home. The truth in that is it has to be paid for. The money has to come somewhere. Now, do we cut police? Do we lay off zoning officials? How do we get that money? In this city, the majority of our homes are owned by landlords. We are a primary rental industry in the city. And that's not a bad thing. But if there's one section of people who will benefit most by property values going up, it's landlords. Now, when we proposed this idea of the landlord registration increase, it was a very simple idea. We had some plans that we would like to do, but anything worth doing is worth paying for. And we wanted to show and make sure that we could find a way to fund those programs. We didn't want to pass something that was an unfunded mandate that we would have to pull money from police or fire to pay for. Now, in my opinion, if we can attract homeowners to the city with down payment assistance, if we can renovate foreclosed homes with a grant, not only will homeowner values go up, but landlord values will go up. And when you look at it over a 5-year or a 10-year period, the increase that we were talking about was a $100 increase a year, which works out to be about $8.33 a month. So let's say you own a rental property, you have to pay an extra $100 a year. In a 10-year period, you paid $1,000. But imagine if your property value could go up $5,000 or $6,000. That is a pretty good return on your money. Now, we've asked our citizens who work out of the city and live in the city to pay more. We have moved our street lighting from the general fund to capital, so we're doing less investments. This was asking landlords to invest in a city that has made them money so we can turn this around. And I've sat down with landlords to get their take on this, to get their input, and we haven't brought it down yet because we want to have a dialogue with landlords. We want to figure out how we can do this that impacts you the least, but we can still do these programs. Because homeowners, landlords all want to see property values go up. And we know the programs that can get us there. We just have to figure out how to pay for them. And that's what the real thing is behind that. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I understand the logic of where you're trying to tie that together, but the true property values is a person owning the home.
Yeah, absolutely.
The true value for the city of Canton is the person owning the home. It's not for the investor in the properties. The reason why investors own a great deal of properties in Canton is because they were low-hanging fruit. And investors came in and bought them because there weren't other interested parties buying. There was no competition.
Yes.
So to tax them by adding that additional fee, all they're going to do is add it to their monthly rent, charge more, make it more difficult to bring people in, even good renters. They're going to find it easier to rent in the townships than they are in the city because your rates are higher. Your thought sounds okay logic, but it doesn't work in reality. And that's where I want to go.
And I would just add, I'm sorry, you can bring it up. I would just add to John's comment is that, we talked a lot tonight about ideas and which directions we're going. And the idea is to have, the landlords who some make a lot of money, and on the residents who live in the city of Canton, have them pay a little more. That idea, that notion, isn't something that's completely fleshed out. I think John mentioned in his comments that we're still meeting with landlords, different investors, and trying to get their take on it. And one of the things that I've actually heard from talking with some of the different investors in the city is that there's a component to the way that our licensing structure is now that it exempts certain federally funded housing. And so it kind of skews the market a little bit. In that if you have housing that's subject to a federal subsidy, you don't have to pay these registration fees. And so the landlords who don't have that benefit do. And so that's part of the mix because we want a healthy rental market just like we want a healthy home ownership market. And so the different ideas that we're talking about is maybe taking that exemption away to kind of level the playing field a little bit. And so I bring that point up only to kind of reaffirm, to stress that we welcome all input from any investor in the city. You've put you're a stakeholder in this community just like anybody else. And we want to keep this dialogue moving to get to an idea, a solution, whatever the case may be, where everyone is. Because that's what we're all trying to do.
Okay.
I have a couple of comments. One to tag on to this discussion. I read from probably one of the most reputable landlords in the city. He's here still, Mike King. If you raise fees on Mike King, essentially what you're doing is raising my rent because those fees are going to be transferred on. That's not Mike's problem. It's not his fault. But you raise fees on the landlords, you're raising rents on the public. That's the bottom line the way I see it. Mike doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Mike is somebody who cares about his tenants and wants to see them succeed, and he wants to help the community. There's a lot of community development projects and so on. So that's my concern is that he's already working hard to make this a better city and help out its citizens. And to put an extra fee on him is basically going to be something he's going to have to transfer on to his tenants, and he doesn't want to do that. And I certainly want my rent raised. The other issue that I want to comment about is that I live downtown. I live across the street from what I consider the biggest nuisance property in the city. And it is because of one of the solutions in the city, where we brought 1,000 jobs. Apparent from what Tom West told me yesterday was the day that VXI has increased their jobs there in the VXI building to 1,000 people, which means you have 1,000 people focused on one block in the city of Canton. The problems created by focusing all those jobs in one block of the city has brought in all of the troubles from every neighborhood in the city to my block. And I have talked with Thomas, I've talked with Derek Gordon, I've talked with numerous different people about these problems that we're having that have been created because we've had all these people, many who are not professionally behaved, and I'm putting that mildly. We have had an increase of drug activity. We have had an increase in vandalism
like to convert them to homeowners in the city of Canton.
Whatever.
When you find jobs, I'm right with this lady, we want to get these people working, but when they're bored in your neighborhoods, they're there all the time, but when they're bored on the break, they come and trump on my place, and they don't really know apparently. And again, it's the same thing as what somebody has said here, is that it's not every person, but there's enough bad apples in the crowd that it makes it every business downtown, with possibly the exception of McDonald's and Subway, has been overly stressed by the presence of this one business being brought in. So I guess my question is, how do we address these reactions when you change something that significant and you have not changed your safety forces, or you haven't changed anything else to adapt to the problems created? How do we get it?
Well, first, I don't want to make light of anything you said, but when you said you live downtown, and you live across the street from the biggest nuisance property in the city, I thought you meant here. So,
That's second.
all right. Thank God she was talking about us. You're right. I want to jump back to the first point that you made. I do want to address the second as well. The first point is, as my friends John and Edmund said as well, that the conversations are still happening, amongst with landlords and property owners. Let me also tell you, they're still happening with us as well, because that concern that rates being passed along to renters is one that we share. And just to squeaky voice and all, I'll try to make this quick. My wife used to work for a third-party payee service. People that were on Social Security disability and maybe didn't have the capability of taking care of their own bills. So the check would go there, and then they would pay the bills, and they would get what was left, $10 a week, $15 a week, $5 a week in some cases to live on. Every week, $5, try to live on that. So when you consider, and look, I'll tell you, I grew up dirt poor, okay? There was, at no point growing up with a single mother, with 3 kids, my mom ever earned, even the most overtime she ever got, I don't think she ever made more than $20,000 in a year. So I know exactly what you're saying, and I feel it, and it's not something that's being taken lightly. And so let me just assure you on that point that the debate is continuing here as well. Now, I will say that there was one real positive that I feel came out of that proposal, which is the conversation, which is we just need to have these conversations and debates amongst ourselves with investors, with renters, with homeowners, with everybody. Because when you jump back to the second point, which is poor planning, okay, these decisions are not made in a vacuum. Everything we do, everything that we affect is going to have effects on other things. And it's just a point that we have to look at the whole picture. It's the, missing the forest for the trees sort of thing. And so you're right. And I would be willing to work with you as well. I know you got a laundry list of people you've already talked to. If you'd like to add my name to that, I'm more than willing to jump in and try to do whatever I can. So, but I think that does just go to the topic that we need to think of big picture.
All right. We have a gentleman right back here. I'm going to let him ask his question or comment, and then we're going to wind down this. So if anybody would like to speak to us afterwards, we will stick around. So, go ahead.
Just one comment about the landlords and the rental properties. I heard you speak about the castle and all that, or whatever it was. My point is, if you got landlords that are taking care of their properties, why don't you help them? The ones that aren't taking care of them, you know who they are, we know who they are. They ought to pay the price. I mean, I don't mind paying. I'm a landlord. I own 2 businesses in town. I own rental properties in town. But if I won't rent to you unless I'm living there, that's the way I feel. And I
on the entire topic, and I think what makes the four of us unique is we don't come in like bulls in a china shop and try to shove things down people's throat. We're willing to listen, and like Kevin said, some of these conversations are very important to actually have. One of the things before I got on city council always amazed me was when I was reading the agenda, it says emergency, 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 emergency. How can we have so many emergencies on the agenda? Everything comes through very quickly. Sometimes the four of us has been deemed as disruptive, non-cooperative, mavericks. That is not the case. The case is, do not bring down a half a piece of legislation that does not make sense, that is not feasible, and think that you're going to shove it down the four of our throats, and we're going to take the advice that we were given after we were sworn in. Keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, and you'll get reelected. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay? But on behalf of the guys and myself, I really want to thank you for coming out here. Your input is invaluable to us. Your involvement to the community is huge. If you don't belong to a neighborhood association, quit making excuses and join one. There's strength in numbers. And when you get an opportunity to come to meetings like this, embrace it. Do it. If you see Ward 9's having a meeting and you don't live in Ward 9, show up. Landlords, you're hearing strong numbers. Mike Rucavina, he calls me if he's got an issue, if he thinks I'm way off target. He calls and he talks to me like a real person. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He just tells me, out of your damn mind. This is unreal. It's an open line of communication. We're actually real people. We're not politicians.